Good afternoon. I the biggest surprise is that I'm here, not somebody else. I have a dream, and you're gonna laugh. That's okay. I've been laughed at before. Feel free. I have a dream of seeing Lancaster County covered with grass. Amen. And forbs. And forbs. Do you know what forbs are? It's just a fancy name for weeds. But when I'm done with my talk, I hope you understand why I say it that way. And I got a couple questions already that I hope if I don't cover them for you, you can bring it up at the end. I'll try to leave time for that. But I want to be the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. Very good. I love that. And I have more questions than answers. I'm curious. I'm always trying to figure out why things work the way they do. And some of those questions have been answered, but every time you answer a question, there's another one to ask. I don't know if you ever noticed that. It can be frustrating. But I want to tell you before I get started, I want to take you on a little tour of our farm. And before I do that, I want to say that don't let these pictures distract you. They're illustrations of what happens when you follow the principles. I did not ordain these laws, but I think they're in place, and the closer we can follow those, any scriptural law, and these are there if you look closely, the more you will benefit from them. Now, mankind has a super way of fudging around what God's direct vision is for him, and just kind of reasoning around that to make it sound more doable. But there's three ways that I'd like for you to use this information. First of all, for yourself. If you have a problem in your lawn or your garden, you might want to think about some of the principles that I will be sharing here today. Or if you're a farmer, how many here are active farmers? You make your money farming. How many of you grew up on a farm? Look at that. You see what's happening here? We want to change that. We want to get you back on farms, the next generation. It's my dream. And the sooner I realize a dream of getting you back on the farm, the sooner my dream of having Lancaster County covered with grass and forbs will be realized. So that's my goal. The pictures I'm going to show you are for illustration purposes only, and then I have a couple slides at the end where I go through these 6 principles, and I may be going back to some of these pictures to show you how they illustrate what the principles are trying to teach us. And these 6 principles are not original with me, and I don't think they're original with the fellow that arranged them on the slide. They're original with God. He put it in place. How many of you noticed already that when you mow your lawn too short, something happens that you don't want? Yeah, if you talk to anybody that with a little bit of experience with lawns, the longer you let that grow, the better the grass can compete with the other things that you don't want so much in a lawn. And I would beg and plead with you that if your lawn doesn't look exactly like you want it to, that you don't call your lawn guy that's going to put more pollution on it than any farmer ever would, regardless how unorganic he was. Don't fall for that. Just put up with the lawn. Take dominion, but do it gently. Be a steward, okay? I believe the dominion mandate is super misunderstood. It's not like slash, burn, poison, get rid of what you don't want to make room for what you do want. It's not that way at all. So I'm privileged to be part of a farm that was imagined by my grandpa and was farmed by my father for 38 years, and then for myself for a little bit longer than that, with my son helping. And so it's a multi-generational farm. We love it. The opportunity is tremendous. Now, this is not my farm, okay? This is Lancaster County. The green part in the front is some land we rent, and we're up on a hill, so we get to see the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, or the not so glorious parts of them sometimes. But it's kind of fun to work up here on the hill and watch. Is there a way I can change these slides? Okay, so this is a picture I took the other day. We have our dry cows here just below the house where we live. My son lives in the other house. And so we believe in outdoors. Barns are an enemy to cattle, okay? So that's one thing that makes dairy farming a lot more doable in most of the eastern United States anyway. You don't need a barn. And I learned the hard way, like some of you did in the crowd here, that barns can burn down. You know, they can be taken away in a heartbeat. More pictures of the dry cows with our house in the background. Just some pictures of the farm a few years ago, and this gives you a picture of the farm buildings. Here are some images of farm buildings. We're a pasture-based farm. What we want to do is have pasture. Pasture is the thing that we taught our cows to enjoy. There might be 1 or 2 cows on this picture that ever tasted grain in their entire life. And that was probably one of the biggest surprises that we had along the way, is that when God made corn, I don't think he was thinking of cows. That's my opinion. And I think that okay, so a cow, the physiology of a cow is such that when you feed a cow grain that never had grain in her entire life, and you would feed her, say, 20 pounds of corn, you might have a dead cow in a short time. Because the cows have villi on their intestines like you do too, and when you feed a calf grain, some of those villi have to go because it would make the cow so efficient. I mean, she would get so much out of that grain, the animal would, that it could kill her. If you fed the wrong thing to your horse, you know that would happen. I don't know how many of you have horses, but take it for what it's worth. Grain for a ruminant is not necessary. It can be done. And in years past, when grain was cheap, it was done. A lot of it was done. This is more like what we have. The picture before this is early spring. You can see those leaves are hardly on the trees. We kind of like that kind of grass, but you won't have that much of the year. Most times it's going to look a little bit more like this, and this is not all bad. Now, if you notice in the background, we're planting trees. That worked my wife over pretty good. She came from an Iowa farm where a tree was an enemy. Okay? Big equipment got caught on trees, and it was not a good thing. But this was something that I enjoyed, especially watching the tree planting project, because this was totally my son's idea. I didn't know anything about it till he had already planned to plant trees. So at least I have him convinced that it was his idea. No, it actually was. So now, you remember I said something about Forbes? You ever hear of Curly Doc? How many of you just cheer when Curly Doc comes in the pasture? No, because the neighbors think you're a bad person. All right, don't worry about what they think unless they're willing to pay your bills. But here, you see I have something valuable in there, some grandchildren in there. And they were getting centerpieces for decorations. So there's something useful about everything in nature. But beyond what you see here, you wouldn't want those in your front lawn, I get it. You're too Americanized for that. In Romania, when I was there some pretty many years ago, very few of them had front lawns. They didn't have a lawn at all. Think about it. So this was an experiment we did before our Soil Health Academy class in September. We had that planned for about a year. And so we left 2 acres right in the center of the one field that was untouched from April till the Soil Health Academy. And even after that, we didn't graze it. We just let it go. But we took the 50 students in the Soil Health Academy and brought them into this field. I tell you, I never saw so much excitement in one place out in my fields. And especially the instructor, he said, you look around here, he said, this is amazing. Now, by that time, this picture was probably, I'm thinking around the 1st of August. Now, this was 2 months later when the instructor was in there. By that time, all these forbs and weeds were gone. I mean, at least gone. They had kind of wilted down and went into the grass. And if you're not sure why that's important other than looks, just hang on, we'll keep going. So here you see more of the type of grass, and we have done some novel things here. These cows don't look quite as healthy, and I'll tell you why. They are working very hard. Each of these cows have 2 or 3 calves trained onto her. And so she's out there doing 2 things. She's giving them all the milk they could wring out of her. And trust me, they try. If you've ever seen a calf at work, you know they're not going to let much milk left in the udder. So the cows are overstimulated for production. We actually do feed them, and we do move this fence every day. It's very important because cows working this hard are going to need all they can get. But what we have found is calves that have grown like no tomorrow. We now have tried to let them on for about 9 months. Okay, so this is our composting operation. We do a lot of composting, not the way they do it in Haiti. But I was told this past year at the Soil Health Academy that we probably should be doing it different from this. So we're still learning. And this is the buildings, the central hub of the farm from the backside. I think I have, these are just weaned 8-month-old calves. And it's hard to get a good picture, but if there's any farmers here, that would make you happy. It makes me happy when I look at it.
They were on mom's milk till 8 months old.
Yeah, they were on mom's milk till probably 9 months old. Or close to it, 8 months for sure, and getting all the grass they wanted. Here they are weaned now. But you know, of all the things we do on a farm, there's people, I've talked at meetings before, and people say, so what do you do? And I said, well, we farm and raise children. And here's the second crop. These are grandchildren. We had 11 of our own, and we have 9 grandchildren on the farm and 21 others. So we're blessed. Couldn't be more pleased to see that. This is the healthy grandchildren with an understanding of what makes a farm tick. It's a thing called work. Yeah. Okay. And here they are with the parents. Now, hats off to the parents. They have more patience than I ever thought I had, and I bless them. It is a joy. I am a privileged person. Okay, so regenerative agriculture, I want you to think about this and the 6-3-4 principle. Am I standing in the way for some of you guys? I hope you can find a place you can see around my wide body here. But farming and ranching is a synchrony with nature and 4 ecosystems process to repair, rebuild, revitalize, and restore the ecosystem. Functions starting with life beneath the soil and expanding to life above the soil. Now, it's hard for farmers to get this in their head, and I know that because I am one, and it was hard for me to understand that life under the soil is way more important than life above the soil. If you want healthy anything, and especially healthy food, you need to understand the 6-3-4 principle, and you probably do. You use these principles probably whether you understand them or not. I know we did. But putting them in an orderly fashion for Western minds, okay, it helps us to understand what we're trying to accomplish. And I don't care if you're in Haiti or Africa or wherever, Sub-Saharan Africa, Romania, China, whatever place was mentioned here, these principles will work for you. And I can say that from, Sustainable Ag Solutions has a ranch in Thailand. Am I right on that? Or is working with one? Where's Joel? Is he in here?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, okay. So Alan Williams is a world-renowned, he's the guy I borrowed these slides from, and he travels the world. So I was just texting the other day, and I said, we have a ranch in Thailand. If you ever get to Thailand, would you care to stop in and give us some advice? And he said, that could happen sooner than later. I was on the phone with people from Thailand today, wanting to have him come and teach these principles. So, yeah, it works. Wherever we go, it works. So here's the 4 ecosystems that we're dealing with. And this is not part of the 6 principles, but it's part of the base for where we're going. You have energy flow, you have water cycle, you have mineral cycle, and you have diversity. And we're going to hear some more about diversity this afternoon. I'm looking forward to that. And here's the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship. 6-3-4. Compounding. In other words, you have systems working together. It's not just one thing. I know that farming in America is cookie cutter style, and new grazing farmers want me to prescribe for them a successful set of do's and don'ts, and that is not possible, as we will see. But compounding, disruption, and diversity are super important, and we'll get into that some more. So the 6 principles are know your context, and that is probably the most important ones. And I've heard that here yesterday and today about context. Is that ever important? It's super important.
Amen.
For me to go down to Haiti and tell them how to do things with not understanding of what their climate is, what's available to them, would be foolish. So context is the first thing you need to teach a new farmer, anyone, to understand soil is what is your context? What happened to that soil for the last 5 years before you got to manage it? And what kind of climate do you have? My wife and I took a pretty long trip out to the West Coast the other summer, put on 9,500 miles, and we realized that we live, on the way home, I told my son, don't sell the farm. I haven't seen a nicer one, a greener one anywhere. Oh, man. These farms were dry as a bone. I mean, they had cattle out there, but I couldn't imagine there was anything to eat. But they say if you see skid marks in the pasture, not on the road, in the pasture, it probably a cow stopped to get a bite of grass. She happened to see one, and she stopped quick for it. She was running. Okay, the second principle is do not disturb. Super important. And especially if you live in a dry, brittle climate like I just described. You go tearing up soil, you go tearing up years of goodness in some cases. And I'm sorry to tell the Lancaster County Farm, I'm not going to ask, because I'm not going to give an invitation later, but I'm not going to ask how many of you are row crop farmers, but there's forgiveness for that too. But do not disturb more than you absolutely must. And when you do, there's consequences. There is consequences. Okay, cover and build the surface armor. So if you have soil that has to be bare for any reason, the most thing you wish for is for that to be covered again. Now, why would that be? Does someone have a good suggestion on why you'd want soil covered? Keep it, yeah. Well, it could blow away or erode. Either one is not going to be good for you. I told the group yesterday that a ton of topsoil in an acre is about thickness of this paper. Now, how many of you would notice in the morning if your soil was this much thinner than before? You wouldn't notice, but it happens. Many places in this country where the topsoil was 40 inches deep now have 10 or 12, and they wonder, why can't we make a living on 500 acres anymore? Why can't we make a living on 100 acres? I think the goal of, I want to help you do what one of my early teachers said. He said, you see what you look at. And we heard that too in this conference. See what you look at. It's so important. Jesus told his disciples and other people, he said, open your eyes. Look, can't you see? The fields are white. So, principle number 4, mix it up. Just what a good farmer doesn't want. If you read Farm Journal from 1965 to 1985, you saw field after field of perfect corn and alfalfa and soybeans, and they still do it. They're usually advertising something you shouldn't even be thinking about, and the field is perfectly clean. And I have to tell you, when I see a field like that, I think, I don't want to be there. Get my next meal. Keep living roots in the soil. That is so important, and that is where grass wins every time. Cover your soil with grass. This is a little cheesy and cheap, but if your cows need grain, let someone else ruin their farm. You build yours up. Think about it. Now, and rule number 6 is grow healthy animals and soil together. Now, there's a synergism with soil and cattle, especially ruminants. And in the Bible, it's often the word cattle is used, and it means sheep and goats and everything. But a cow is especially a walking fermentation vat. I forgot to bring my phone. I wasn't going to be like the rest of you guys and not know when to quit, but my phone's still down there. But if you could bring my phone up here, I would appreciate it. That way I can answer a couple. No, I'll watch the time. But growing healthy animals and soil together in a cow is just made to order to improve your soil. Thank you. Made to order. You can. A cow is a walking fermentation vat with over 200 kinds of healthy bacteria coming out of the tailpipe. Okay. You need to think about that and how you can use a cow to improve soil. And I traveled in New Zealand some, and it wasn't uncommon at all for them to let one field go to seed and then turn the cows in there, eat those seeds, and then take them to a field that needed the seed the next day. Not uncommon at all. That way they got inoculated seed applied as evenly as you can with the inoculant with it to keep it alive until they could get rain, which is not uncommon there. They usually have lots of rain. So how do we, let's go back over these. Knowing your context is a little bit like if you're a missionary in Haiti and you want to find out how to make the farmers you're working with successful, probably what you're going to be doing is taking them to a farm that is doing such, right? Am I right? Find one if you can. And if not, there's ways to get it going and then show that to people. And the reason that's important to look inside of your context is because they have already dealt with a lot of the issues you will be dealing with. And then the do not disturb aspect, we heard about burning and how foolish that is. And actually, there would be times and places for a little bit of controlled burning, like a lightning strike or something like that. Maybe other times. But what we want to do, I've heard that burning takes as much energy to compost as it does to burn. Do you ever hear that? So why not compost? Give living soil a chance. If you want to change your garden faster than any other way that I know, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to garden, and I don't consider myself an expert gardener, and my wife isn't here, so you're going to have to put up with me. But covering that soil with good old hay mulch. Forget about the weed seeds in it. Don't worry about that for 10 minutes. Just lay it on thicker. If the weeds come up, put more on top of that. Is one of the fastest ways to improve soil and not disturb it. Okay, so I think we need to do a little digging to get the seed in there sometimes, but that can be covered up immediately, almost immediately. So that goes right into number 3, cover and build surface armor. So in a garden, you don't have quite the luxury that we do on a pasture because you actually want to grow some vegetables. So then that's where you cover the soil by hand, and you can handle that. Then mixing it up. And again, I can't say enough. We have to understand some things about grass to understand why it's important to mix it up. So grass is a mirror image under the ground, what you see above the ground. So what do you see above the ground? If it's a good pasture, it'll look more like where am I going? The wrong direction here. There, back to the one where the weeds are. That's what I call mixing it up. Now, when we... Okay, I held it the wrong... when we allow this to happen... Okay, so I need to finish the rest of the story. We got out there and we looked around and dug down in, and bugs were just aplenty. Now, the problem with pesticides is, if you need a pesticide, you probably have a mismanagement issue to begin with, and especially unhealthy soil. But there is something about insects, and especially dung beetles. I think most of you heard of dung beetles. They will take a cow pod, a manure pile, and work that into the ground in unbelievable ways. And so they are only part of the whole story. There is a lot of insects here, and one of the keys to soil health is soil temperature. Now think about it. So if out on the road beside this field, you see the wire in the front here, this is close to the road. It's probably about 300 or 400 feet back to the trees there. But out on the road on a hot summer day, you probably had temperatures anywhere from 125 to 140 on the road surface. And if you cut the grass short, you'll probably have temperatures of 1 to 110. And you can have higher, especially if it's a straw stubble, because it tends to reflect the heat back down on itself. And it is devastating to soil health. Soil bugs like temperatures from 55 to 75 or 80. And the more you can keep your soil in that temperature range, the more progress you will make. And this is perfect for that. Now, if you would go in here in the winter, let's say that it would have snowed in here yesterday, and we would have had that crop that you see there. Okay, I know some of you don't call it a crop, but just stick with me. If you had what you see there covered with 6-8 inches, a foot of snow, and then temperatures in the 20s or less, you could dig down under that snow and through that grass, and you would see moving, living bugs and spiders on the soil surface in the wintertime. And that is so important. If the spiders and bugs can't be moving around, not much is going to happen. I mean, they're not the only thing that makes things happen. But the other thing is that when soil like that, our aggregation layer, I should have brought a picture of this, but aggregation happens. It's that cheesy, almost looks pebbly layer that grows under the soil. I would say on most of our farm, like on the grass beside this, we had about this much. I dug and checked it out, about this much. Where this grass was, it was about this much. And when we left this go another 2 months, it was this much. Now, I don't know about you, but you have to understand value and how that's measured in soil. But we were so excited when we saw that we thought, how can we do this to our whole farm? So our plan is now to try to get our worst acreage on a rest cycle every so many years. If we do Old Testament style, it might be 7 years. I'm not sure if you'd have to do that, but improve. What happens when you get that aggregation layer in there, you start releasing a lot of seeds will germinate that couldn't for years because they didn't have the fertility to do so. And that's critically important that we get the big blue stem and the buffalo grass. And, I can't think of the different heritage grasses that have disappeared long ago because of our mismanagement, our desire to have those perfect looking fields that you saw in Farm Journal. Okay, so the idea is when big blue stem will hold its 25% protein for weeks. And the other thing, we're going to hear a little bit about seeds this afternoon, and I want you to put this in your little red book and keep it, is that a seed grown on your soil, in your garden or your farm, will outperform anything you can buy. That's why it's so important to save seeds. Second generation. Think second generation. Same way with cattle breeding. The genetics on your farm should come on both sides, mama and daddy, from your farm. You can grow the best livestock. I think it would have stretched us big time to sell a cow for $2,000 at any stage, any kind of, I just never was a cattle breeder. Okay, that's not my forte, but I do understand this much, that we are now regularly selling heifers for $2,500 to $3,000 before they freshen the first time. And if I don't think the Pennsylvania Convention sale would average that, and they're usually classified and registered and all that. We don't have any of that. All we know for sure is that if it's A2 or not, and that it was raised here on the farm. We don't even always know who the sire exactly was. But our aim is to have most of the bulls we use on our farm raised on the farm, and there's a really big reason for that. We have had way more success with the growth of our calves. That and the nanny system of raising heifers had just changed the landscape of our next generation coming on. So where were we here? Confused about which direction to go here. So so here we have two things I want to discuss again some more. One is that when you have grass this tall, imagine the root systems underneath. Remember that when grass plant most generally is a reflection of what you see on the surface, and if it's stock like you see there and on the right hand of the picture, those curly dock have a taproot, and taproots are important. Okay, they can work for you. You sweat that. Just look the other way. Okay, how did I ever get talked into this? Stay with me. It is so important that every root, there's probably, I'm just guessing, but we had some of our pastors checked by some experienced plant people, and we probably have from 80 to 120 species per acre or more. And this is surprising to me because in my foolish earlier years of doing grass, I thought the best way to have cows milk and have fun with cows is sow a new field every 10 years with a good latest variety of grass. Absolutely wrong. Now my goal is to grow my own seed, including the weed seeds. Don't tell anyone. But you must understand that every plant that grows there has different root exudates. Those are the acids that grow on the root, and they are intertwined with each other. And the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So if you understand that principle, then you realize that the more wholeness I can get, the better I will be off in building soil. And remember, I'm building soil. I'm primarily a grass farmer, soil builder, first of all, then a grass farmer, then a dairy farmer, if there's anything left. But the other beauty of long grass like this is, now, seriously, how much of that do you think they'll eat? Let's say there's 2,500 pounds of dry matter, not green, 2,500 pounds of dry matter there. How much do you think those cows will eat? Maybe more than that, maybe 50, maybe 60. But if our goal, ideal, and you almost never reach that, but you have a goal, is to trample 40%. Now there's a key to trampling that I just learned the other day, and we've observed some of this, and we understood the principle a little bit. But I had a farmer who had a field that was rectangular, let's say it was the size of the screen, and he divided it in three parts, and started at this end and grazed it that way. Big trouble. He lost his stand. He couldn't keep it. The cows didn't like it, and it would thin out. You know, sometimes you got to figure out where the thought pattern is going. So he did it a different way. He ran his lane along this side. One change he made. The lane went along this side, and he grazed it this way. And he said it was completely different. And he grazed it in blocks, like, okay, so he would go to here. And the next day, or at noontime, or the afternoon, he would give him some more. So a lot of pasture and a lot of trample. That's the key. Why trample? Somebody have an idea why we should trample grass? Okay, cover and something else. Food for microbes. 25 years ago, long after I was an organic farmer, 10 years after, no one even knew what microbial anything was. I mean, a microbe was, no one understood it. I don't think we do yet. Something was said here about the microbiome. Well, you have one. And the microbiome is more, there's more living, breathing critters on you and inside of you than there are cells in your body. According to, I don't know who counted, but let's just believe it. So think about it. You can feed those microbes to your animals first or to your garden, and you can bring in, we've often marveled at how much better we felt and how much better it tasted to eat food out of the garden. Did you ever think about that? I mean, Shady Maple has beautiful array of vegetables over here. Go over to the store and just be awed by how much variety is available this time of the year. But it's been said that most vegetables travel 1,500 miles to get to your plate. Seriously. Do you know what that means? It can only mean one thing, and that is there's less life than there was when they started. So, but anyway, getting back to cows, I'm getting carried away here. Better make sure I'm staying up with my time. I want to leave some time for questions here after a bit. But so there is so much involved in what's happening with the right kind of pattern here. And it'd be hard for me to describe how happy cows are that get a new plot every couple hours, and especially every day, twice a day. We have learned for cow psychology that when we try to take the cows in a different direction in the morning than the evening, because they're just like you and I. They get bored. Raise your hand if you're bored. So they like to go a different direction, one in the morning than the evening. They'll go much better. So a few years ago, our cows, somehow a fence was down. We didn't have permanent fences quite a few years ago. And my neighbor had just done silage lanes through his fields. And they walked through one of those silage lanes, which is about 30 feet wide, and over to his barnyard. And he called me. He said, I have about 30 of your cows in my barnyard. Wow. I said, I'll be back. I'll be over for him. So I went over. And I was on the ATV, and they followed me right through the lane that they came on. Never one cow took a bite to the right or to the left in the corn. For one thing, they didn't know what it was. And the second thing is they weren't hungry. They were on a trip. They were, hey, a fence is down, man. We can go visit the neighbor's cows. And so there were 30 cows in his lot. He just couldn't believe it. He said, did you bring holders for all of them? I said, no, they just knew where to go. And they followed me back like, head down, Why did we do this? So I think we understand. I mean, my dad always said, and he was not really a grazier in the truest sense of the word, but he said the best fence is what? Good feed. Good feed. And most times we built a 4 or 5 strand fence around our farm. We would never do that again. Why? 2 reasons: cost and maintenance. Whenever you have more than 2 wires there, that's all you need. Most cows only need 1 wire. Now, if you have sheep, goats, different context. You'll regret it if you have sheep or goats. Okay. So, yeah, it's been, we would all like this kind of pasture, and we enjoy that while we have it in the spring. But trust me, it's not sustainable. This is not going to make you the most money. The most money will be made when you have a consistent growth through the year that cows can appreciate. Okay, there is times when your cows will talk to you. And it's like one farmer said, he learned to graze. The dipstick on his tank was the biggest teaching tool. When that went down, the cows weren't happy. And sometimes they'll tell you that too. They can get pretty verbose. I think I'll stop with that. I just want to check my notes here. One thing I want to mention is I have a friend here, Steve Hepburn. Steve, stand up, please. Okay, thank you, Steve. You can sit down. Steve, I found him through a common issue that he had his barn burn about when was that? Half a year ago? 8 weeks. 8 weeks, sorry. And I know what that feels like. Only he didn't have the community. They were new in their community. They didn't have the surrounding community with him. And I invited him here because I wanted to meet him, and I want to spend some time with him in the next week or 2 or 3 and help him with that project. And I'd love to have some reinforcements. So if you're at all interested in something like that, why, let me know. I think the most important thing we can do with farming or anything is be good neighbors. So that's my goal with Steve. Thanks for coming, Steve. But are there any questions? Anything I'm missing? Anything that is not clear?
I don't have a question, but I did want to say there at the end he was talking about happy cows and well-fed cows. And this morning I stayed with Roman. My family did the last 2 nights. And this morning when we walked out to get in the truck to come here, his son was driving around with another visitor, showing him the farm. And I watched him come up the road, and he had a wad of hay, a bunch of hay on his lap in the ATV. He wanted to get rid of it. He drove up beside the fence and threw it over the fence where the cows were and came along. And I stood there marveling that all the cows just continued standing where they were. And I made the joke when they pulled up to where we were and stopped that, well, these are years ago, the advertisements on TV for milk said happy cows come from California. But I joked this morning on Roman's farm that I think they come from right here, because I've never seen cows be thrown hay and they wouldn't run to it. So everything he just said, I'll testify that I witnessed it this morning myself on his farm.
I have to be careful or I'll get classed in the bottom 10%. Your genetics, how do you determine which bull you're going to keep from which cow? Are you on a testing program?
Yes, we are in DHIA tests, so we have an idea what the cows milk. I'll tell you this. Average production per cow is about 10,000. And I didn't come to discuss the profitability necessarily. I was not really what I was asked to do, but I know the first question in some of your mind, could I afford to do this? My question is, could you afford not to? We can, our butterfat runs between 5 and 5.5, or a little 4.5 to 5.5. And when we switched from from grain, some grain, a little bit of grain, we thought it probably wouldn't make any difference. But we found out it made trailer loads of difference. We were probably feeding 5 pounds per cow per day. And to replace that dry matter that was in the corn with hay took 10 trailer loads of hay. Cows will eat hay like there is no tomorrow, and that's what keeps them healthy. You know what you should have eaten when you were over here. I saw some of you eat more salad than others. Okay, you're not a cow. Forget what I said. But it is profitable. We can typically net between $1,500 and $1,800 a cow per year after all our expenses except our own living is. So it's worth it. And any other question? I saw another one over here somewhere.
A lot of these principles, you're trying to follow nature. Talk about the nanny system of raising calves. That seems to be a counter nature.
Okay, let's call that stewarding instead of taking dominion. But I will say that to train some cows to accept a nanny calf can be a bit of it needs to be an attitude adjustment for the cow sometimes. Some are better than others at that, but what we did find is the second or third year they'll do fine, really fine. And they kind of understand it. And once the calf has drunk the cow's milk, say it's not mama, and there is a problem. If you put mama's calf in there and 2 other calves, she's going to favor her own. Who wouldn't? I get it. But, yeah, you just have to show them what you want done, and they'll usually do it. It has worked amazingly well. All calves are checked for A2, and other traits that we're interested in, like no horns. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but people don't like you dehorning anymore. So when we dehorn, we now carry lidocaine with us. So if you need a stitch or something, come over. I'll put some lidocaine in and we'll get you. But we can inject lidocaine in here and then burn the horns off the first day, if not the second day. So, yeah, is that natural? We just know it grows super healthy calves. We almost never have any problems with sickness in calves. Once in a while, there's one that we feel gets pushed back, because you got to remember, there's 25 cows and 60 calves, and calves are not nice to each other. They'll butt this one off and get the rest themselves. So you have to be healthy to survive this situation, and it has worked. Yeah. Next.
Do you ever bush hog fields or pull weeds?
Pull weeds, not so much. We have dug some thistles over the years, but what we found was after we got our soil switched around, the cows would literally go and eat the thistles, literally. Calves more so. And we found that balancing soil has reduced the weed pressure, especially those difficult to control weeds like mile a minute. Anybody here familiar with mile a minute? Literally, it grows fast. And it will take an area and nothing else will grow. It'll seed to that. So we didn't know what to do. We thought of using vinegar or salt or diesel fuel or whatever. But while we were thinking about it, they disappeared. Hey, life isn't always that easy, okay? I can promise you. Any other?
Can you mention something about your son's plan with the trees? Is it a silvopasser system that he's...
Okay, so we hired a fellow that, he's a local fellow. He's here in Morgantown, a couple miles away here. His name is Austin Unruh. And he specializes in finding funding from companies that want to buy their green license, their permission to sin. They buy indulgences, is basically what they do. And they will pay him to plant trees. And we have got paid anywhere from 0 to 2,500 an acre for planting trees. It just depends on the funding he can get. But this is not government. No government money in this. And then there's time involved in getting those trees protected from livestock, and you got to keep them protected. Now, what we planted was bean locust and another locust. Honey locust. Not much difference between the two, except the one has beans that will actually produce a substantial amount of dry matter in a year's time for the cow, and they love them. And then persimmons. They like those better after they're ripe. But they're a lot of fun. If you can get somebody to taste one that isn't ripe yet, why, they'll never forget it. Next question.
Maybe some more people have farming questions too, and this is a farming question too, I guess. Can we have a discussion, or maybe you can answer, how do we apply the great ideas and examples of community development, regenerative agriculture, redeemed relationships, as we're reaching out to our own communities here, the Amish and Mennonite here in Lancaster County primarily, I guess?
Good question, and that's a whole subject for a whole other time. But I will say this: after the SHA Academy, the Soil Health Academy, put on by Alan Williams, these people, this was not a free meeting. This was $1,350 a piece to take that meeting. We had 47 attendees, I think. And one of these was an Amish neighbor boy, a 17-year-old boy who paid his own way in. There is some scholarships available that people have put up to help, because they are so interested in this information getting out that they will literally pay for you to go, part of it. But this young Amish boy paid his way in, and he came to me in tears afterwards. That meant a lot to me. We lived beside him for all his life. And I'm sure we irritated each other. You know, no question about it. We're human. But for him, he said, I want to farm so bad I can taste it. He said, I want to farm. I didn't have much interest in it. I have a job off the farm. I can't change the way my dad does things. I'm not interested in doing that. And my encouragement to him is be very respectful of your dad. Honor your dad, first of all. But if you would have the opportunity to attend the Southeast PA Grazing Conference, as Smoker did here, Jay Smoker was there, and Michael Rank was there, like I did for 30 years, and you see people come and learn, and a few years later, you ask them to share their journey. We love to hear stories about how people switched from whatever they were doing to a more sustainable way, and they have all kinds of colors to that. But they'll say things like, okay, so we generally pay our speakers a bit for that and their travel expenses. They'll say things like, no way, I wouldn't think of taking anything. I got so much from this over the years that it's worth way more than you could ever pay me. He said, I'm good. And I that means a lot. And, you know, so when we started this 30 years ago, I was one of the first 4 farms in Lancaster County. I was organic, but there was no milk market, but all of a sudden there was. And now there's probably 200 farms in Lancaster County that are producing organic milk. Maybe more, but it's getting very close to that, if not that. Is there do we have time for any more questions? One or two more? Okay. Okay, winter grazing. I love to talk about that. That's 15 minutes. Okay, sorry. Next. No, I'll try to condense it. But a couple years ago, we started winter grazing, and we were just blown away by how much the cows loved that. You would think the cow would prefer to have a barn. They don't. I have some movie clips of cows enjoying a winter storm, and the next day they were in snow this steep and grazing just about like normal. They learn. Okay, there's a tuft of grass comes up through there, their nose goes down right there, and they just go back and forth like this till they get what they need. Now, we also generally feed some hay along with winter grazing, but when the cows are out there, they're always clean. And we adjust their hay feeding according to what we think they need and eat. And every year, the cows look better as far as coming in with just the right amount of flesh on, not this fat, dry cow, fatty liver issue that overweight people have like myself. No, they're healthy. They're out there in the weather and walking every day, walking around and spreading their own manure and produce a replacement. I mean, it's a miracle from God. It's made for us to understand and benefit from. And I am so thankful that we have a good milk market. And some people like to do the direct marketing, and that is just not our forte. I think it's a great thing, and it's a good way to start on a small farm. But for us, it just seemed like too big of a leap for the size that we were and needed to be for 2 or 3 families to make a living. But thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing interest in this. And I would love to have, we're going to have a Soil Health Academy in Belleville next year. I don't have anything to do with it, but there's going to be one there. And if you're a farmer or a missionary that needs to know more about this, you need to be there. You will respect and honor soil and the person that created it more than ever. I promise you. No question. Thank you.